Welcome everyone. My name's Kenneth Martin from Block Architects. I'm the Managing Director and Founder of Block Architects based in Hamilton, and my colleague Bruce Scotland is with me today.
Good morning everyone.
Good morning. Bruce, yesterday we got some very exciting news for the project we're working on down in North Lanarkshire on the banks of the Clyde. We know it as Garrion Tower, and that is the conversion of a Grade B listed tower into what will become one of Lanarkshire's, if not Lanarkshire's, premier wedding venue. So the team are super excited about that. You've been pretty instrumental as a project lead in developing the design and looking at the project and working through the planning process.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask if Bruce, can you take you back to when we first saw the building, which is probably in worse condition than it was then because it's weathered for a year or so. But I'm going to take you back to that time when we first walked up through the avenue. And tell me if you can, or give the listeners and the viewers a wee bit more information about how your first impressions and then site analysis started to inform the final concept.
Yes, okay, thank you Kenneth. Yes, so first impressions were, wow, you know, it's a grand building and the setting was what really kind of stood out for me. However, it was clear to see that the building was in a state of disrepair even back then. We know now that things have gotten considerably worse inside of the building, maybe not so much on the outside, and we know that some repairs have been made as a temporary measure. But first arrived on site, we saw that the building was, yes, in a state of, you know, partial to almost complete disrepair. However, we saw the client's vision. I think they described it to us very well, exactly what they wanted to achieve for this building. Mm-hmm. And from the go, we were on board with that, but it was fundamental for us at Block Architects to undertake a thorough site analysis. So Kylie, my colleague, she was the one who then prepared that site analysis. So she considered the likes of sun path, the existing and proposed access to the site, the topography of the site, the views across the site were very important to our client. And she also had to consider the proposed development, which arced from the southern right up to the northern boundary of the site, which in itself would have a great impact on Garrion Tower and those views out. So it became apparent to us through that site analysis that there was a substantial slope down to the Clyde. Certainly a lot of green space, a lot of lush trees and the like. And we then took that design and developed that into a concept drawing.
So initially then when I met the client, we met Laura and Nicole, and I think she had the building for probably about a year, coming up on a year. And I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning this, but she did say that she'd kind of lost a little bit of fire for it. You know, she was looking to put the fire back in her belly, sort of thing. So that was really the initial sketches that we did, and those have been presented on YouTube in the past, etc. So people can go and look them up if they want to. But essentially, the first step was to use that concept analysis, the site analysis, getting to know the building, and to come up with some drawings and sketches that would put some fire back into our belly and explain Block Architects' vision for what the venue could become.
So yes, well we took all that site analysis, and as is often the case with projects, certainly through my own working, I have an idea in my head of how I think this thing is going to look, and then I put it down onto paper. You start to develop that slightly on CAD. Obviously we have a brief, we have a structure to how things work, so we developed a concept drawing in 2D on CAD, which then I handed over to Kylie. Now, we didn't have Block Studio at the time, but we did have Kylie, who was very proficient in taking what is, you know, for want of a better word, a boring kind of line paper drawing, and she transformed that into something, you know, really quite magical for the client. And then it was so much easier for us to take that design and say, look, this is how we see this site being developed. How do you feel?
So Bruce, after we did the initial site analysis, we then obviously came up with a vision. Now that came about over a series of months, not just overnight. So tell us a little bit, please, about the end up, the vision, what we've created for the client.
So ultimately, we wanted to design a building for a developer that was reactive to not only the existing Grade B listed Garrion Tower, but more importantly, reactive to the site and the site surrounds. So we have beautiful views, from the tower all the way down to the River Clyde. There's woodland, there's grassland, there's everything that you could want from a premier high-end wedding venue. So we had to design something that took into account all of those things and made this the real standout venue within North Lanarkshire and beyond. So the first thing about the site was this wonderful tree-lined entry road or access road, that takes you from a very busy Garrion Bridge all the way into this secluded, wonderful spot where you're almost transported from the hustle and bustle of everything else on the Clyde side into this magical venue, essentially. So we really wanted to capture all of that at our point of arrival. So we designed, obviously, this huge areas of glass to allow views from one end of the site right down through to the River Clyde, so that you're always connected. As the bride and groom arrive, you're not only greeted by guests, but you're greeted by this spectacular outlook. You come into the building, we wanted everything to be grand, we wanted everything to be wow, this really is something stunning. So you've got a huge floor to ceiling champagne bar, certainly. You've got this wonderful green roof, and the idea of the green roof was that the guests could walk out onto that through this spectacular champagne bar onto a roof terrace, which in itself essentially forms an extension of the landscape. And from there on, you've got this log burner where you can sit outside in the cold at end or during a wedding and look all the way down across the Clyde, down across fantastic terracing, certainly, down to the since demolished but soon to be renovated pavilion in the garden grounds. So one of the ideas was to cater for weddings of all sizes. So you have this. We wanted to use the tower as best we could, but we knew that for the sizes of weddings that the developer is looking to host within the building, we had to prepare a space which was essentially built for purpose. Now, we didn't want to make that something, I suppose, simple and boring. We wanted to do something which was quite radical and out there.
Yeah. So one of the fundamental things about the project, though, really is how we sensitively fit quite a big brief into the landscape.
Yep.
Yeah. Because these wedding venues are essentially big halls, and how do you fit a big hall into a sloping site? Yeah. While still making the original tower element, the if you like, the hierarchically most important feature.
Well, the tower had to stand proud. So when you take the rear elevation, for example, we've not only stepped down on a kind of horizontal plane, but we've stepped down on a vertical plane as well. So if you look at the relationship between the extensions on either side, you can see that there's a clear defining line between what was, as in what is a tower, and what is to be. So that's done through essentially glass atriums, which they just gently kiss the existing building. There's not a solid structure there that which gives us a continuation. It's more of a, we have this fantastic tower. You're going to then step into the space where you're transported from what was, which is going to be very grand in a historic sense, into to what is now to become, which is going to be very grand but in a more modern sense. And that's where the I suppose the internal and the external material palette has quite an impact on the design. We've yes, we have a hall for 180 guests,
which is conveniently tucked underneath the building, because the hall sometimes, whilst is a grand feature, can sometimes become more of a box.
So the hall will be, there'll be access from a hall out into the existing garden grounds. However, above the hall is a fantastic roof terrace. And that roof terrace itself features, a kind of a grand fire pit, as we call it, because we want everyone in that building, or everyone who uses that building, we want to connect them back to the landscape. So our way of doing that, connecting back to the landscape, is to bring people through this grand modern champagne bar with unobstructed views over the garden grounds, over the River Clyde. They can then come outside into this. It's my favourite feature, the roof terrace. It's a living roof. It's a living space, and it connects people essentially back to the landscape. So we realised that after our thorough site analysis that to fit 180 people into this building, we need to dig down, and the best way for us to dig down and the best way for us to connect back to Garrion Tower was to step levels and step our design.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental. That was probably one of the fundamental key moves that allowed us to free up the remainder of the spaces. Because we're dealing with slopes and trying to create such a big volume, put a box somewhere. Yeah. The clever position of that was the thing that unlocked the rest of the design. Yeah. It's definitely the main tower, the historical element, bookended by two modern contemporary architectural extensions. Yes. And I think I agree with you. I think that the whole, by removing, if you like, green space by putting a new footprint on, that really drove the idea of the green roof, which became the terrace from the champagne bar, because we're trying to replace back and give more green space back. So
100%.
And apart from anything else, I think it's the one space where we can see ourselves with the client on opening night. Actually, hopefully on a nice sunny day, having a glass of champagne and enjoying the sunshine.
One of the other things is to have a venue of this size and of this scale. There's so much that I suppose you need to consider. You've got kitchens, you've got staff quarters, you've got toilets, you've got all the facilities that come with a modern building, which we might not necessarily be able to fit within the tower itself. So the larger that we made each of the extensions, we had to consider how all of these things fit within that footprint. But in themselves are not detrimental to the overall design aspirations.
Because essentially it's quite a tight site. There is, although it's a big site, the actual usable footprint of it is relatively small versus the brief. So the consideration of where car parking was going to be put, because we know when we come up the driveway, we turn the bend at 90 degrees, and then that's the money shot. That's where the tower's in front of you there. So the last thing we wanted to do was to have a sea of car parking in front. So we to tuck that to the sides. A lot of careful kind of consideration, strategic moves that allowed us to maintain and then enhance the setting of the tower. Yeah. Since there's two money shots, there's the arrival shot, which is wow, because the tower's in front of you, and then there's a view at the back, which we've made full input. It's a very impactful view, so we've taken full advantage of that with the orientation and layout of the building.
Yeah, and that's something, we presented a concept to the developer, and that concept was based on our early findings. And once we had once we realised that yes, we are all on the same page, and we had hit all of those points that they wanted from this venue, it was a case of tailoring that to make it, even more befitting of the location. So
and the concept's still very strong relative to the resulting design that we've just got planned.
Nothing was lost. It was only further developed to allow us to better use the site, particularly the slope. The slope's a huge part of that, and that can be seen not so much from the front, but certainly from the rear. So the rear is one of the main focal points for me.
Fantastic. Bruce, I wanted to get you to think about the fact that we've been working with the client now for just over a year. Something that's very important to me as the MD and founder of Block Architects is that we nurture and grow strong relationships with our clients. Some of our clients might be one-off, commissions. Some of our clients are repeat business. They're developers who might have multiple portfolios, etc., and keep coming back to us for more work. But our two clients on this particular project, Laura and Nicole, this is the first time they've really jumped into anything significantly like this project. Talk to me, if you don't mind, a little bit about the importance, in your view, of the relationship between the architect and the developer client?
Yes. So, as a project lead, Laura and I engage directly with one another on a day-to-day basis. Now, in a project of this size, certainly there are a lot of other consultants that require to be appointed as part of the statutory approval process. Now, as we understand, that's certainly something that is expensive. So there's a lot of front loading to this kind of application. So Laura had to trust me, and essentially she had to trust Block Architects that we knew how to take this project forward and the best course of doing so. So, Laura and I daily, we had phone conversations, we had email conversations, we worked together to appoint the right consultant or the right design team for them.
Yeah, no, you're right, because essentially what we've learned from the client on this one is it wasn't necessarily a cost-driven decision. The clients on this one were particularly emotive people, in as much as that they wanted to get a feel for the consultants. And they based their decision on feeling, as opposed to just what is the fee for doing. Some commercial developers would take the view, what's your cost? Can we save a wee bit of money, and we'll go on that basis. But that wasn't the case with Laura and Nicole. It was definitely, let's have a look at touchy-feely, let's meet the consultant. They met a few engineers, consultants, etc., and then they made their decision based on how they felt they would fit the team that they were also trying to create.
That's correct. Yeah. So certainly myself and Laura met with a number of prospective consultants at Garrion Tower. I think one thing that drew certainly Laura to us at Block was that we were very enthusiastic about the project. Enthusiastic but realistic. And I think what they were then looking for as they appointed further consultants was that level of enthusiasm and trust, because obviously it's such a grand scale. We didn't want to just put anything into planning which could be rejected, knocked back. We wanted to make sure that everything that was going in as part of that process was certainly pertinent and would help expedite the decision. And ultimately we got a positive decision, but that positive decision wouldn't have been capable, certainly, if it wasn't for the right appointments at the start.
Yeah, I think the planning and the compliments to North Lanarkshire Council Plan Department on this one, because it was a relatively straightforward.
Very much so.
It was relatively pain-free, and they were certainly very enthused by the application when they first seen it. And we had feedback that we'd actually kind of approached the planning department prior to putting the application in, and the kind of feedback was that they thought the wedding venue was going to be, if you like, a very understated conversion of the tower, with potentially some kind of tent, in the grounds.
That's correct.
And I think they probably were blew their socks off when they seen the design we were actually putting in, and that actually encouraged engagement. The CGIs that Block Studio did certainly encouraged engagement, and really did truly show the planners the kind of vision that we and the client were trying to go ahead with.
Laura and Nicole were both very proactive, and in them being so proactive, as were we.
Yeah,
and this is certainly something which, as a team lead, I've been trying to coordinate information from all of the consultants. And whenever something has been requested from North Lanarkshire Council, such as an amended document for whatever it may be, noise impact assessment or the like, such as a relationship that Laura has built with the other consultants, they jump at the task.
Yeah.
It's not been a case of, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's been a case of, I understand your enthusiasm, your passion for the project, and that's certainly something that's, I would say it's been influential to the decision.
Absolutely. So talk about enthusiasm for the project. You personally have got an enthusiasm, or you're enthusiastic about working with historic buildings. This isn't the first that you've worked with. You've worked with a few in the practice. So tell me then perhaps a little bit about your, what learnings has other projects fed into this project, and what do you think you can take out of this project to other historical projects?
Yeah. So yes, you're right. Thank you. Yes, I have my passion certainly is, as discussed, is historic and listed buildings. So we've done a number of historic and listed buildings in Glasgow and in Stirling. This is one of the first, certainly in North Lanarkshire. However, the things that we have learned on our previous projects, we were able to carry on to this one. So, it's not a case of submitting a set of architectural drawings anymore. It's a case of bringing together all the other consultant information and going in with a comprehensive body of information, which again is going to expedite that process.
So one of the fundamental things that I would say the practice has understood from working on several listed buildings is the fact that because it's a listed building, you really need to advance. You really need to advance the level of information that you're putting in for the listed consent. So that would mean that you essentially need to draw the design to a building warrant standard, so that information feeds back in at the planning consultancy stage.
You need to get into that level of detail because, as we found on previous projects, it's not just a case of indicatively showing where a wall may go or where a wall may be upgraded or the thermal envelope of that building may be upgraded. Everything needs to be considered because not all of the modern techniques are suitable for a historic building. So yes, you need to go over and above that level of information which you would be accustomed to for say, planning or a listed building consent application, and you always need to be thinking ahead to the building warrant application, or certainly you need to be thinking ahead to how this thing is actually going to be built, and that then influences, I suppose, the overall design, specifically the internal aspects of that building.
So I think if there's any developers watching who are looking or embarking on a journey of working with an older building, or more particularly a listed building, I guess one of our biggest lessons then is that you really need to be, and the NPF4 brings this into play now as well, because we're learning as we go. That's just over a year of NPF4. But realistically, we're now in a position whereby we need to really make sure a lot of the reports that we would anticipate being required for the planning application are done and dusted and obviously paid for prior to the application being submitted. It really is the only way to, as just been proven with North Lanarkshire Council, is to get a relatively prompt decision through the process. Otherwise, the delay in preparing those reports and bringing in those other consultants really just kicks the can down the road, doesn't it? And all of a sudden, the planning process, instead of taking 3, 4, 5 months on a listed building, could be a year, 18 months, which really doesn't benefit the architect, the design team, the client, or the planning department. So I would certainly think that's one of the biggest learnings that I've taken away from working with you on several listed buildings, is that we are definitely trying to educate our clients, no matter how experienced they are, but to educate our clients that doing these reports up front is really the quickest way to get through the planning.
So yes, that then plays back into the trust and the relationship with the client and the architect. So when you have an application such as this, for a building of this scale, to get it through the process of listed building consent and planning, you really need all that information at the start. So that information such as your arboriculturist report, your noise impact assessments, your road assessments, structural assessment of the existing building, everything like that needs to be prepared in advance to be submitted to the planning department so that they have a full body of comprehensive information. Now, to do that obviously costs money, and that is money that comes in at the start of a project, and it isn't always able to be spread across the project because you essentially need it there and then. So Laura and Nicole had to trust us that what we were saying, yes, you need this, yes, you need this, and this, they had to trust us to the point where they knew that was a requirement to get ultimately the positive decision that they were looking for.
Yeah, and I think with that trust, that level of trust, if there's any other developers out there watching, then I think the NPF4 thing, we really need to be in a position whereby developers are trusting in the advice that their architects or other planning consultants are telling them in terms of the level and the detail of reports that's required. So, for example, with Garrion Tower, there was an issue with the access road, which we're not going to get into too much depth with today, but the road, traffic impact assessment wasn't quite completed before we put the plan application in, and that was for various reasons. But ultimately, that was the thing that delayed the application or the decision for a month or so, just in the end up.
That in itself brought a couple of certainly very fixable issues. But yes, planning did come back to us and ask for an extension of time, and these things are going to happen. It was one report, that's fine. We were all on it, and we're all very accepting of the fact that, right, okay, they need another few weeks to reach that decision.
I guess ultimately, though, the point is that in working with various buildings in different listed buildings or older buildings in different local authorities, this is a knowledge bank, a level of information that the practice now has as to how we move these types of projects forward, and ultimately gain planning approvals for our clients, because that's what our clients who want. Developers want the most cost-effective, quickest in and out of the planning process, so they can then start moving towards the building control process. Bruce, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time. It's great that Garrion Tower is now approved. We have meetings going ahead over the next few weeks with the client to push forward with the building warrant processes and the next stage of delivering the project on site. Block architects are extremely enthused about it, and I know the team just cannot wait to get started. So on that note, I'm going to leave the video here and catch up with you soon.
Thank you.